So I want to welcome everybody to Career Conversations, which is a University of Rochester virtual series. It's been developed to help you leverage your existing talents, build new skills, keep up with industry trends, and pursue new ideas and journeys throughout your life. If you are interested in the previous versions of Career Conversations, you can find those in the webinar library. I am Rose Cooper. I graduated from the Simons School in 2010, and I'm a member of the UR Women's Leadership Network. I'm very proud to present this event in partnership with the Women's Network, Eastman School of Music's Institute for Music Leadership, and the Susan B. Anthony Center. Our speaker today, Rachel Roberts, is fabulous, and I'm sure you'll find her presentation engaging and enriching, and we have breakout sessions as well. Before we get started and I introduce Rachel, I do want to let you know we'll be recording Rachel's presentation and the Q&A sessions, but the breakout sessions will not be recorded. And during Rachel's presentation, if you have questions, we encourage you to put them in the chat box, and you can also send them by private message in the chat to Michelle Cavalcanti. And she'll ask the question for you at the end as well. We do encourage you to engage with your fellow participants during the discussion. Alrighty, so I am going to right now introduce Rachel Roberts, who is going to talk to us today on gender wage gap, how to determine our own personal value, and develop techniques for salary negotiation. Definitely a topic that I am always excited about. So a little bit about Rachel. Rachel Roberts is a 2003 graduate of the Eastman School. She has navigated both nonprofit performing arts and higher education sectors with very unique positions in both. She is currently the director of the Institute for Music Leadership within the Eastman Music School. And prior to that, she was an associate professor of music leadership and the graduate degree program director. She has a master's degree in education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she was a student in the special studies program. She designed coursework that focuses on leadership and organizational development, specifically to investigate best practices for learning communities. While she was in Boston, she's an active participant in the Boston Mayor Marty Walsh's initiatives to eliminate gender wage gap. She's led over 32 AAUW salary negotiation workshops and helped educate over 850 women throughout Boston on salary negotiation. She has a university-wide partnership to bring AAUW salary programming to the University of Rochester community. We are very excited and happy for Rachel as she is currently pursuing her education doctorate from the Warner School of Education at the U of R with a focus on higher ed leadership. So at this point, I am going to pass it over to Rachel to start today's program. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that introduction, Rose. And thanks to all of you for spending a little bit of your time this evening to join us on this important topic. I, as Rose said, came to this as a participant in a full AAUW workshop in Boston. And I love the material so much that I became a facilitator and volunteered to lead sessions to spread this information as far and as wide as I could. And so tonight is actually my 48th workshop that I have led on this material. And I've trained just under 1,500 different individuals how to navigate salary negotiations and learn about advocacy on gender wage equity. The material that I'm going to be sharing tonight, I did not design. It's produced and published and promoted by AAUW, American Association of University Women. I'm delighted to be able to share this information with you. And if at any time you would like to go through the full workshop, we do offer those occasionally online and in person, but you can also do it asynchronously. I've just posted the link in the chat. You can do this anytime or share it with your family and friends and encourage them to take these classes as well. So I'm going to share my screen and dive in. We have about 45 minutes together, and then we will be in the breakout rooms. Can everybody see my screen, or is it the presentation view?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, great. Thanks, Becky. So tonight, there's 4 steps to salary negotiation that AAUW puts together. And this is what we will be covering: how to know your value, how to know your target salary and benefits, knowing your strategy. And as a musician, I love the 4th one: practice, practice, practice. Before we dive into these negotiation skills, though, I'd like to start by addressing the why. The reason AAUW is working to bring these negotiation workshops to communities across the country is because we have a long ways to go until the gender pay gap is eliminated. This is an issue that can affect you as early as your first job and can follow you all the way into retirement. So the tools presented in this workshop hopefully will empower you and anyone to advocate for yourself in your own career and overcome any pay gap that you may be experiencing. Just a few numbers before we begin. So as you all know, the pay gap is how we describe the inequality between what men and women are paid nationally. Right now, working women, full-time working women, are paid 82 cents for every dollar a man is paid. And all of these numbers are located and sourced from the AAUW website. The gender pay gap exists in every line of work, at every educational level, and at every age. As you can see on this slide, women of color are disproportionately affected by the pay gap. These lost wages mean that women and their families have less money to support themselves, to save and invest for their future, to pay down debt, and to spend on goods and services. Families, businesses, and the economy all suffer as a result. The data reported is from the National Women's Law Center, and they use a formula to estimate total losses over a 40-year career. So if these percentages were equated into the salaries that women earn, overall, women would lose just over $400,000 over the course of their 40-year career compared with a man. Black women will lose just under $1 million over the course of their 40-year career compared with a white man. And Latinas lose over $1.1 million over the course of their 40-year career compared with white men. This is not a women's issue. This is an economic issue. And if the pay gap were to close tomorrow, 2.5 million children would be lifted out of poverty in the United States. There are many causes of the gender pay gap. I'm certain some of you may have lived them, some of you may be experiencing them, or have other insights. A few that are most prevalent is women are just simply paid less for the same work as a man. Women are overrepresented in low-wage jobs and underrepresented in high-wage ones. Women are well represented in undervalued fields, such as healthcare, education, and public administration. And women are often discriminated against and face barriers that result in lower pay because they are often caregivers. And if they aren't caregivers, they can be perceived as future caregivers, more so than men. Before moving into the negotiation skills, I'd like to pause one more time and acknowledge stereotypes in the double bind. The double bind represents conflicting demands women receive around behavior expectations, especially at work. Women often have 2 choices: to be seen as competent or to be seen as liked. Likeable women are sometimes seen as incompetent and may not be given stretch assignments. When women step outside of cultural expectations and are assertive or advocate for themselves, they may be seen as unlikable. This is a factor that can make negotiations even more difficult for women. You often need to be seen as competent and liked in order to get what you want. So I'd invite you all to open your chat right now and type in, what do you see as your biggest challenge in negotiating your salary and benefits? Thanks for sharing that, Lori. Yeah, confidence in what you're asking for. So there's two pieces in there. One is your own confidence, and the other is knowing that you're asking for what's fair. Implicit bias, being a Hispanic woman, that's exactly, yep, would be a challenge for sure. Lack of clarity for a fair process, absolutely, that's another one. Valued equally as my male counterparts. Looking like a fool if not given. Yes, Ariel, there's so many that resonate with this. How to negotiate properly and not be pushed over to accept the initial offer, negotiating back and forth. These are all valid challenges. The thing that I really love about these workshops that I hope all of you can carry forward into your communities that you interact with is that all of these thoughts and hesitations and challenges are not just carried by you, they are carried by everyone. And by you being here today, this is building a community of individuals who will be partners, who will be colleagues, and who can be references and allies as we all try to change and make salary negotiation systems more equitable. Caroline, thanks for chiming in about imposter syndrome and your age. Yeah. So thank you all for being here. I'll have you type in the chat a couple more times as we go on over this next hour. But I'd like to move on to step one, knowing your value. I hope all of you have received the workbook from AAUW, and I would invite you to pull that up right now. We will be referencing that. We don't have time to go through the whole thing, so I hope you will take it and use it for yourself. Maybe you already have in preparation for tonight. The first step in preparing to negotiate is to know your value. How do you confidently and articulately share the value that you bring and the contribution that you will make to a position in a way that resonates with an employer? This seems intuitive, but for many, this requires some behavior change. For many of us, we are not comfortable talking about our accomplishments. And for some, there may even be cultural norms and how you were raised that make this much more difficult. The first step is to building your resume is a piece of it, but there's work that goes into this prior to building your resume. So for tonight, I would like to use the example that is found in your workbook on page 6 and 7. Olivia Taylor will be our fictitious job seeker that we will be following throughout the workshop this evening. I would invite you to read her resume, her skills, her accomplishments, and her work experiences. And then type in the chat again, what would you articulate about Olivia's experience? Where could she bring value to an organization? Or are there any words or phrases that stick out to you from Olivia's resume? Again, as you read through this, it should be in your workbook on page 6 or 7. Feel free to type in the chat, how does Olivia demonstrate her value in her resume? Yes, great, Sue. Communications and marketing. And I appreciate what you said about evidence-based results with exact numbers. That's key. Anytime you can quantify something on your resume, do it. I would argue that most anything can be quantified, and that puts things not in your opinion, but rather states it in a fact. And Rose, the award-winning social media campaign sticks out to you. I appreciate that one as well, because it shows that her work is not just doing what's expected, but others are recognizing it and she's receiving awards. Highlights for the leadership experience. Yes, that's a great one too. And I believe if you go further down, even though it's volunteer experience, she talks about the leadership volunteer experience that she's had with sports. That ties into the job posting on page 7. So if you can review that job posting, what we're looking for is how Olivia's skills that she demonstrates on her resume connect into the job posting. I'll give you a moment to read that post. Cassandra, thank you for that. Yep. So if you compare the two, you'll look at where Olivia's experiences align with the job posting. She has the adequate amount of years of experience. She oversees client relations. She has excellent communication skills. She has knowledge and experience with social media, and she demonstrates her familiarity with sports. I think the one other piece that I'd like to highlight before moving on in this section is that when you look at Olivia's resume in the workbook, you'll notice that she does not list specific months and years for her job position. Instead, she focuses just on the total number of years and months worked at a position. This helps to reduce any perceived bias that there may be if there's a gap in employment. That gap in employment could be for any reason. Some of you may have a gap in your employment and it may not be direct one job to another job. So it's important to, if that's a concern of yours, or even just for equity reasons, that's more of a trend that I am seeing in the careers office that I work with, that having students or having professionals put just the amount of time worked, not specifically the days and or months and years from a position. And yes, using somewhat similar language as a job posting, that's excellent as well. Often employers, especially with larger corporations, will run materials through a reader, and if enough language does not match, your resume and your cover letter will never make it into the hands of a hiring manager. So it is important to use language that's reflective of being able to demonstrate similar language, similar tone, and similar concepts between the job description and what you are stating on your resume. You are your own brand. We hear this a lot in social media and influencing. We are not digging into personal branding, but instead this image is up here to remind you that you are your own best advocate. No one knows the impact of you and your work as well as you do. And on the job market, you sell something that is unique, you. This includes your identity, your work experience, your work ethic, your interests, your goals, your personality, your education. All of this is something to develop language about and be comfortable talking about in an interview or negotiation situation. So I'd like to do one quick exercise with you. This, again, will not, unfortunately, have enough time tonight, but I hope this will prompt your thinking and you can take this forward and revisit it again after tonight's session ends. So take a moment and just think about these questions. What differentiates you? How do you bring value to your company or organization? What skills, accomplishments, and work experience demonstrate value or the contributions that you will make in the position that you are seeking? If you want to jot down some notes, please do. So building on this is figuring out how to know your value. On a notebook or sheet of paper, or in a document online, whatever works for you, write down as many accomplishments, contributions, skills, or relevant work experience, and things that you are proud of. I'm setting a timer and will give you 90 seconds to do this because I know we are pressed for time this evening. But try to keep your pen moving, pencil moving, or keys typing as you write stream of consciousness, as many accomplishments, contributions, and skills that you can think of that you are proud of. I'll call us back together in another 75 seconds. Okay. I know I told you this was woefully short, and it is, but we need to move on. After you have that brainstorm, the second step is to take just one of those things that you wrote down and think about the following questions. What did you do to make it happen? What role did you play? What were some of those positive results? And how can you quantify it? I'm going to give you another 60 seconds to take one of those things and see if you can identify and articulate answers to some of these questions. I'll call us back together in a minute.
Rachel, do you want us to wait until the end for the questions, or are you looking in the chat?
I'm looking in the chat and I think I'm going to try to wrap this in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so that's 1 minute. The purpose of this exercise is to be able to articulate your value. This is a formula rather for a value statement. It's a way to demonstrate your accomplishments, to demonstrate your goals and to demonstrate, or your skills rather, and your results by using a sentence somewhat aligned with this structure. So you would say, I accomplished X using your Y skills, which benefited the company by Z results. To the question that's in the chat, I don't know what other hiring managers can always take, right? You never know who your audience is going to be and what they're going to hear. But the purpose of this exercise is to help you demonstrate your value by listing what the accomplishment was, the skills that you used, and the results that you achieved. We can't change the past and what's gone on, but by using value statements like this, it should put your skills and qualifications in an objective tone and an objective statement to be able to demonstrate your value to other people, whether it's a hiring manager, whether it's your boss for a potential negotiation. An example of a value statement, one that's here in my notes, is I developed a training program for new hires using my project management and leadership experience. This benefited our company by decreasing turnover 32%, improving office culture, and saving the company an average of $22,000 a year of onboarding costs. So again, to the question in the chat, that is a very specific statement that demonstrates not only cost savings, but measurable impact by that 32%. That's not, doesn't matter that the results are from more than just your efforts. That's a really great question. And I would argue that most everything that we do has multiple people involved. And I think it's right to demonstrate what your leadership is, or that you contributed to a bigger project, and this is what the result was. So we can talk a bit more about it in the Q&A. I need to move on at the moment, but these are all excellent questions. And by putting in your accomplishments in a value statement like this, again, it puts it in a more objective, non-personal way of being able to communicate what you would bring to a company or an organization. And remember, you are your best advocate. You should document your accomplishments. Somebody told me that to do this when I stepped into a faculty role because I'd have to do a year-end report. And it was the best advice I had ever received. I wish I had done this long ago. But just keep a journal and update weekly with achievements and things that you are proud of. Think beyond the task. You know, make certain to think big about how the work you are doing fits into the big picture, not just the small piece that you're playing, but what's the total impact that that work has for the organization. Again, quantify your work, bring data into the conversation, and everything counts. Again, women tend to take on more things like event planning and side projects around the office. This counts. This takes up your time, and it also shows how much more you are managing than others that you may be working with. So step 2 in the salary negotiations is, how do you know your target salary and benefits? For me, this was always one of the biggest challenges, especially working in nonprofit organizations. Often it's not as transparent as some of the other resources that are out there, though I'm pleased to see that laws that are being passed, including in New York State, are now making it a requirement for all employers to post salary ranges on their job positions. I believe that begins in New York here later this spring. In your workbook, you will find all of these 6 steps to benchmarking your salary and benefits. I'm going to hit the highlights of these right now, but would encourage you to spend more time reading about all the resources that AAUW has put together in this section of the workshop. So if we continue with our Olivia Taylor exercise, there's 3 things to begin in remembering. Setting your targets. What does that mean? This should mean setting your salary targets. So your salary target is your worth based on objective market wage data. Your target salary range is a range that you use to negotiate with an employer. Your salary is the anchor or the bottom of that range. Because when you negotiate, you typically start high and come down, an employer starts low and comes up. So your target salary, this first one, should be your anchor. You aim to not go below that target salary. And then your walkaway point. This is the lowest salary that you are willing to accept and still reach an agreement. It's also a tool to prevent you from accepting a salary that you may later regret. Now, this is a very personal decision. Sometimes you may need to accept a job just to have a paycheck, and that's okay. But it's important, regardless of what your circumstances are, to know what that walkaway point is. What's your target salary range, and your walkaway point. As you research salaries and compensation, you should use multiple resources. I'd encourage you to use employer-reported data resources instead of individually reported data. So salary.com or payscale.com are employer-reported data information. Glassdoor and LinkedIn can be supplemental resources, but those often use individually reported data, and the numbers may be skewed or not reflect the total compensation and benefits that an employee may be receiving. If you know anyone at a company you're seeking or in your industry, you might ask them for guidance on a salary. It's a great way to connect data. Or if they can connect you with the HR representatives or hiring managers. Some cities and states, as I mentioned before, are now passing laws to allow more pay transparency in the workplace. So in this instance, if we are using Olivia Taylor, we would input a job title, input her location, Washington, D.C., and then click search. And this is what we will find, Public Relations Specialist 2. And everything that's presented here is on the free information found on salary.com. This is similarly aligned to what that role was. So if you click next, salary.com will show this bell curve. And what this is showing you of every person that is working as a public relations specialist 2 job in Washington, D.C. The 25th percentile earns just under $55,000. The median person working, so not the average salary, but the very middle person, is earning just over $62,000. And those at the higher end of the spectrum, in the 75th percentile, being the most qualified, are earning just over $70,000. What you're seeing up here at the top of the screen, this lag, the match, and the lead, this demonstrates where companies may be relative to all the numbers in a particular zip code. Some companies may lag, they may not pay as much as the companies that lead in the compensation for this public relations specialist 2. And those companies that match are pretty well aligned with this 25, 50, and 75th percentile of the median salaries. So the next step is then to find your own target salary and target salary range within that bell curve. When you are setting a target salary, you will want to aim at or above the median. If you are reaching for a position slightly above your level, you do not want to undervalue yourself to be a competitive candidate. This information is here to empower you. But step number 3 is identifying a target salary range. Once you identify your target salary, statistics say you can stretch upwards of 20% for the top end of your range. When you share your desired salary in a negotiation, studies suggest that you will be more successful if you put your target salary at the bottom instead of asking for it outright. Giving a range suggests that you're more cooperative and flexible, such as this is our target salary range. So a smaller range may be more appropriate, especially if you are in an entry or mid-level in your career. AAUW does not recommend exceeding 20%. For example, if your target salary is $60,000, you could set your range to be between $60,000 and $70,000. That's a 17% range. If you're seeking a salary closer to the 70th percentile on salary.com, don't let this information discourage you. Use your value statements and build a case for what differentiates you as to why you would deserve a higher salary. And then the next step is determining your walkaway point. This is step number 4. Identifying a walkaway point prevents you from accepting an offer that you may later regret and not be happy with. Your walkaway point can be informed by your budget, and it can very well be informed by your personal situation. AAUW encourages that your walkaway point should not be much lower than your target salary, and you should make certain to have a comprehensive budget to match it to ensure you are putting yourself in a more financially secure position. If you haven't done so, I would encourage everyone to create a realistic budget. There are numbers in the workbook, or not numbers, but rather prompts in the workbook to help you do this as a place to begin. And as you evaluate potential positions that you are applying for, it's worth considering the benefits. These are just as important in your salary, and some of them are negotiable. Certain benefits like health insurance or vacation time are usually standard for all employees, but others can be negotiated. So instead of asking for more of everything as you begin to prepare a negotiation, focus on what is important to you. Give your benefits the same objective analysis as your salary. So into step 3, knowing your strategy. Up to this point, we've discussed tactics to be data-driven and highly objective during negotiations. For the rest of the workshop, we're going to focus on ways to become strategic and persuasive. The first thing to remember is that negotiations should not start until after an offer has been made. Some tips that AAUW has put together for entering your negotiation. 1, bring your notes into a negotiation, especially if it's on the phone or on Zoom. Your hiring manager won't know that you have notes in front of you. Even if you do this in person, it's okay to refer to something that you have researched and written down for yourself. They offer to remain positive and flexible and remind you that negotiation is not a battle, it's just a conversation. Remember to not get personal. And in section number 4, will help you anticipate your employer's reactions and prepare for those responses. At the end of the day, remember that if you are being offered a job, your employer has picked you. They want to make it work. They have already lost time and money and resources from not having that position filled. So they are motivated to find ways to work with you and make certain this can be a successful hire. Now, in the application stage and during an interview, you might be asked about your salary history or salary expectations. You might consider using a deflection technique to avoid answering these or negotiating until you have an offer at hand. Researchers have found that the salary history question in the hiring process is one of the most pervasive reasons that the gender pay gap still exists. Some cities and states now prohibit employers from asking salary history. So please be certain to research the laws in your area and know your rights. You can find information about pay equity laws on the AAUW websites. On applications, if you are required to enter a salary, you can always try writing 0 or NA, but if the field does require a figure, do your research in advance and input your target salary or your target salary range. Whenever possible, try to get your employer to share their compensation range first. And again, state laws are changing and this may be happening very soon in your area. If you find that your salary requirements were too low, you can bring that up during the negotiation with a line like, now that I've learned more about this position, my salary requirements have changed, and provide your target salary range. In the workbook on page 13, there are fantastic examples of language for potentially deflecting answers if you are asked about your salary history, or responses to help encourage you about deflecting your salary expectations. Not going to go over those right now for the interest of time, but please do refer to your workbook on page 13 for more insight there. So now that you get an offer at or above your target salary, that's fantastic. You want to review the overall compensation package and decide whether you want to negotiate further or focus more on the benefits. Usually you'll want to negotiate. It's expected, but make certain you can clearly spell out the value that you are bringing in and your reasons for asking for that compensation. Go back to the value statements from step 1. If you get an offer below your target salary, you should attempt to negotiate. Also consider what benefits may bridge the gap and make the offer more acceptable. And if you cannot negotiate above your walkaway point, you might need to consider whether this job is the right fit for you. An important part of negotiating is to learn to respond persuasively. Before entering a negotiation, you should anticipate 3 to 5 different ways that an HR rep or manager might respond to your requests, and be ready with ways to respond or overcome those objections. Again, in your workbook on page 14 and 15 and 18, there are excellent suggestions as to how you might begin to frame your own answers. Also, this is a great place in responding persuasively to leverage benefits if an employer is unable to meet you at your target salary. Similar steps happen when you ask for a raise or promotion. To increase your chances of success, be prepared to ask at the right time, to state your value, to sell your skills, and to negotiate. When you ask for a raise or a promotion, or when you ask for a raise or promotion, can be just as important in how you ask. Timing is everything. You may decide to wait for the normal salary review process for your pitch or not. Maybe you've completed a major project and would like to seek a promotion after you brought in a big client or earned a huge grant, some other professional milestone. The difference is that you have the ability to set a time to meet with your supervisor. You are the one deciding when to ask. You'll want to schedule a specific, I would encourage you to schedule a specific meeting with your supervisor and not spring it on unannounced. And remember that you are the one giving your pitch. You are articulating your value and what you are bringing. So in your workbook on page 17 and 18, here's a sample pitch, one that you could refer to if you are embarking on the same process of asking for a raise or a promotion. And this begins with your appreciation for the work that you've done. And then it goes to these value statements to quantify the skills and contributions that you have made. And then it goes to the ask at the very end. It gives a salary range, and it says also compares with what is in the range for this particular city. I'd like to be considered for a raise that will bring me into this range. Now, one of the hardest parts is just to stop talking and wait for an answer. And sometimes the answer may be that it will require more conversations. Your supervisor may have to go to their boss or to HR and then back to you. That's okay. It's okay that this is not solved in one conversation. But this is a really excellent model for how to structure your pitches if you are asking for a raise or a promotion. Go back to those value statements and then also consider the benefits. Same thing here. Ask if you might have any of these incorporated in, because some of these benefits may add value that aren't financially in your pocket, but alleviate other financial needs that you are paying for. And as with your other offer, if you're seeking a job, get it in writing. You may give verbal acceptance, but make certain that everything is articulated and spelled out in the way that you agree to in the conversation. If it's not, don't sign anything. Wait until it's in writing. Make certain it's exactly how you had confirmed it, and then sign the document. So the last piece, which we are not going to do today, step 4, is practicing. There are examples in your workbook, page 18, 19, 20, of role playing. You can find a friend, find a partner, find a colleague, and there's a script in there. One of you can be the employer, one of you the employee. And as you do this, it helps you if you prepare to be both roles so that you can practice your own pitch and what you will say as you enter a negotiation. But then if you also play the role of being the employer, it helps you to anticipate responses that your negotiating manager, hiring manager may respond to you with. That level of inquiry will help you better prepare and be ready for the questions or objections that may come your way in a negotiation. So Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask for some questions. I think we have about 10 minutes until the breakout rooms. I've seen them coming. I couldn't keep up with them all.
There are a lot of questions coming in, and also a lot of good comments from our alumni career coaches who are here tonight as facilitators. So you have some allies out there and some helpers answering questions and offering their expertise as well. We will do, just about 8 minutes, maybe 9 minutes of Q&A, and then I'm going to ask Rachel to just briefly give directions on the discussion groups, the breakout rooms, and we'll put up a slide with all of our facilitators and the specific rooms that we've created for the discussions. Mm-hmm. So, all right, we'll start. I'll try to do them all, but I don't think we'll get to all of them. Here's one that came up. Have you found company perceptions of a candidate change if a candidate attempts to negotiate a salary and or receives a higher salary than anticipated?
Company perceptions. I can only speak from my experience on this one. I have not. But again, that's only my experience. Somebody else may have experience where company perceptions have changed. That would be unfortunate if that's true. But again, I think that's just dependent on the parties and individuals that are involved in those negotiations.
Jasenia is asking, would love to hear thoughts on engaging in salary transparent conversation with coworkers in same role. That's
That's a big one.
a big one. Yeah.
It is. And, I think there's responses all across the board on this. Again, this is not AAUW. This is my own opinion on the matter. That can be, it depends on what your company culture is first. That's what I would argue. And if you have a transparent culture, then what is the motivation for sharing those? If it's to make certain everyone is paid equitably and equally, that's a fine motivation if you want to do that. But it's every individual's right to either share it or not share their compensation. And for some, I've read studies where everybody knows there's a spreadsheet put out every year as to what the compensation is for everyone. For some companies that works. For other companies, it would not work. And it raises a lot of fear. It raises a lot of anger, and it fosters an unhealthy work environment. So I think, like I said, there's responses and experiences on all ends of the spectrum there. But I would go to what is the motivation for doing that, and what is the culture in the work environment that you are in. Those are two big factors to consider.
Thank you for that. There's lots of chat going on, so I hope everybody's reading it as well. There's another question, what to do when boss doesn't want or isn't prepared to talk about salary increase or future growth?
Yeah, so if you're hitting a roadblock immediately, perhaps what you could do is say, could we revisit this in another month after you've had time to think about this, or maybe in 3 months, try to set a timeline for when you might be able to revisit these conversations again. At the end of the day, if your supervisor is unwilling to have those conversations, then I think it goes back to what is in your control. Do you want to stay in that position with the compensation that you are at, or is it time to start looking for another job or a transition to a different department?
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions about how to, correct your salary if you've been hired at a lower level, or, if you took something that wasn't, was for that particular job, but the job has changed, you take it on more responsibility, and it keeps growing and changing. And there are a couple of questions like this, and just sort of wondering, how do you go back and kind of adjust those lower salaries to compensate for what you're actually doing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it happens more often than not, especially if it's a new job or a relatively recent role. I would go back to one of the suggestions that was made earlier from AAUW. Keep a notebook or keep a journal of all the things that you are doing. And then as you are preparing for this conversation, do a compare-contrast of what you were hired to do, and then rewrite your job description, highlighting all of the other pieces that you are doing. Not just the duties, but also the responsibilities, or maybe oversight of other employees, or financial oversight. What are all of those pieces that are wrapped into those quote unquote other duties as assigned? And then after you do that, the next piece of background research is doing looking at what salary compensation ranges are for jobs at that level. What's in your area? What are industry trends? How can you benchmark others with that level of responsibility and how that differs from what you are making. And then the third step is to prepare your pitch when you go into that conversation. And using the formula that's similar to what was posted here this evening, what you appreciate about the role, what has changed and that you have been taking on and working on, and that you would like, you've done research and would kindly ask that your compensation be reflective of the roles and responsibilities that you have been doing, you know. So again, as much as you can do background research and come prepared to those conversations with facts, not just your opinion on the matter, but with facts and what you are actually doing, that I think would be one strategy for a way to proceed.
Thank you. I know there are just so many more questions, but this is why we also have the breakouts. So we're just at 7:29, and I think we're sticking to our schedule pretty well. So did you want to just give a brief description of what we're going to be doing in the breakouts? And then Becky will be putting up our breakout list. It's according to subject, and then it also gives the facilitator's name. Why don't you go ahead, Rachel, and give us a couple of sentences there?
Happy to. So we always have a lot of questions after we do workshops like this. And what we thought we would do this evening is to create breakout rooms that focus on different topic areas. So the breakout rooms this evening will be focused on the following: 1, job searching; 2, job transitions or pivots to new industries, mid-career transitions; a 3rd, historically marginalized and underrepresented groups; the 4th room, I'm saying that backwards, LBGTQ room; another room focused on first generation; another room focused on re-entering the workforce discussion; another room on experiencing ageism; and the final room asking for a promotion or salary compensation in an existing job. So we have all of these rooms offered this evening. When Becky opens the room, feel free to join the one that most aligns with the questions that you have at the moment. I'll stay in this main room if you want to ask questions here, but I would encourage you to connect with others who have similar questions and similar experiences. And you'll see the room names when Becky opens that. I'll also say that the rooms will not be recorded, so that should be a safe space to ask questions.
First and foremost, thank you to Rachel, and as well, thank you to all of our facilitators. Rachel, your content today really tip top. I know I took several new tips and tricks away that I will be implementing in my day-to-day, as well as potential future negotiations. We are very appreciative of this. It's really important work, and we appreciate all that you do for alumni and students as well. To all of our facilitators, you are also here volunteering your time, and we could not put on an event like this without you, and we appreciate your commitment to the university. If you had to step away or dip out at any moment, or you heard something that you just really wish you wrote down, the video of this session will be distributed within the next few days. So as I say, BOLO, be on the lookout in your email for that to have it. Again, the U of R as a whole, we are very much committed to finding opportunities for all of us to connect, come together, and focus on personal and professional development. So if you enjoyed this event from Women's Network or any of the other affinity groups you're thinking about, check out the Meliora Collective online. It's a great resource as well. Some few upcoming events. I would be remiss if I did not plug some of these upcoming events. And one featuring we're in the midst with a celebrity here, not just Rachel, Barbara Grossman. Headhunter on Tap is upcoming on February 3rd. Very excited for that. It's an ongoing series here. And we also have an event on February 9th called Taking the Stage, How Women Can Speak Up, Stand Out, and Succeed. So mark your calendars. Becky is putting the registration links in the chat if you want to sign up for either of those, if it works in your schedule. And you can find all of our events on the, on the RAX network. Lastly, probably one of the things that we are all benefiting from tonight is the opportunity to have been mentored by others in different industries and make connections. So if you are interested in becoming a mentor, the Meliora Collective Mentorship Program is open for registration, but you only have a few more days. The marketer and me, as I'm like, but wait, there's more. Time is running out, act fast. It closes on February 5th. So please consider signing up as a mentor. This is a great program that started a few years ago. We generally see more requests for mentors. So we always are looking for new folks to join the fold. You can also sign up as a mentee as well. And it's a 3-month program. So there is a fixed time commitment if you sign up as a mentor overall. So it starts February 10th. The link is in the chat. So it is 8:01 p.m. And as those of you know me, every great meeting starts on time and ends on time. So I want to say thank all of you for coming. Have a fantastic Wednesday evening, and Meliora.
Thank you, everybody.